Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting and good communication and child development all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. But I also teach education at education conferences around the world. I homeschooled all my children as well as was a foster parent of many troubled teens over the years. And I worked through a lot of learning experiences. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to teach a child to summarize a story. In this video, we're going to be talking about summarizing stories and why this is a useful thing. And we're also going to talk about how people learn and what you can do to help your child learn this valuable skill. So why would you want to teach your child to summarize a story? Well, because that's actually practicing cognitive recall. So when you learn something and you can recall it, then you know it. And everybody else knows you know it too. So it's a way of proving what you've learned. And it proves not only to the other people that hear it, but to the person who does the proving as well. It actually can build confidence to be able to recall important things from your life or your studies. So this is a really good skill to teach children how to do. But it isn't something that comes completely naturally. In the very beginning, children actually have a hard time hooking time together. And so that can make understanding a storyline or sequence of events sometimes difficult. They may remember one event or two events, but they don't remember what happened first or who the characters were that did the events. And that's because that comes a little bit later in their development. When children are in their toddler years, they're mostly focused on something that they can grab onto, an experience that they can relate to, or maybe something that sounds interesting or that someone explains to them. But they couldn't necessarily put the entire story together. That's why when children are hearing you read stories to them, they're often pointing out things like, there's the sunshine, there's the heart. They hear you say the word heart and they point to it, but they don't necessarily know what it means that the little lamb felt a change in his heart. They just know that that is a heart. So putting together the story can take some practice. One of the key things that I did as a homeschool mother to help my children learn how to remember what it was that they read was we did narrations. Now this was something I learned by studying the educator Charlotte Mason. Charlotte Mason talks about having children repeat back the things that they learned to make sure that you know if they're getting it and they're processing things correctly. Some of those narrations when they were little were pretty funny. In fact, I remember a narration that my little son Porter did about volcanoes. We studied volcanoes one day, and we studied about different places where volcanoes happen and how the lava flows and the heat of it and all those kinds of things well above his level. We were studying it probably a little bit more for his older siblings, but he was there and he wanted to do a narration too, just like they did. And I remember he talked about how volcanoes burst up because he remembered that part, and how people run to hide from volcanoes because he remembered that part. Then he started to make things up. He started to come up with solutions. If a volcano was coming to get you, you could hide in your bathtub, he said, or something like that. And he started coming up with things because that's where his imagination was going when we were talking about the volcanoes. He didn't get all of the information about volcanoes, but he got some basic information that for him was very interesting. And now for the rest of us, for the rest of our lives, is hysterical every time that we read it. Now, did little toddler Porter, who was telling us about his version of volcanoes, actually write down the narration? Oh no, he repeated the narration orally to me and I typed it out for him so that we have it forever. That's something that I used to do with the children when they would do their narrations. They would repeat back to me what they remembered about the story or the chapter or the page that we read in a book, and then I would write down their words word for word and then read it back to them so that they could hear their own thoughts. class. It was so powerful. They would get so excited and want to show other people the paper that they had written about something that they learned. This inspired them to want to pay attention and remember key things so that they could talk about it when they were doing a narration the next day. So that brings me to, how often do we want to get recall from our children? Well, if you've been subscribed to this channel, you know that I have a lot of videos on here about homeschooling, education, and about self-government. And one of the big things is repetition in all of it. So when I would read my children's stories, I might stop sometimes after a paragraph and say something to the effect of, would you have done the same thing that Anna did in that story? Or what do you think about her dad going to the war? How do you think she feels about that? And let them try to get into the characters' heads or talk about the things that they were learning. Just having them repeat back the story to you gets boring after a while. Do it sometimes, but also throw in other thoughtful questions that get them internalizing it. That actually ends up putting the story together more than you might realize for them. Another thing that you do with children to help them understand story is make sure that you make up stories with them. Do pretend, put storylines together, do puppet shows and make stories on paper, get big long things of paper and make little comic strips. Those types of things help a person connect storylines together, especially if they're creating it themselves. They'll start to notice themes or patterns in their own story creations that they will then notice in other people's story creations. Another thing that can be really beneficial with putting stories together and trying to figure out stories is having the stories be personal. Tell them stories from their life when they were babies, or stories about their grandpa or their grandma, or maybe a story about you when you were a little girl or a little boy. Those stories are the ones that they will remember the most, because those are stories about people that they love, and they try to envision how you might be as a little boy or a little girl. If you could show them pictures of yourself, all the better. It makes the story absolutely come alive. So when a person learns, they go through different phases of learning. When a person learns to read, there are certain phases associated with that as well. I read a book years ago by Mortimer Adler called How to Read a Book. I was so glad I read that book. Weird title, right? Like, I'm reading a book about how to read a book. Clearly, I know how to read a book because I'm reading this book. But he was talking about how to get the stuff out of the book and how to really study a book. But it had to start with a very elementary level. So he mentioned about how the very first stage of reading is just trying to figure out what it is that the words are actually saying to you. The next level of reading is putting the whole story together so that you could say, this is actually what happened. After that comes compare and contrast with maybe another story. So you're starting to hook ideas together from other places. Finally, you get to a place where you can gather bits of information and syntopically connect that information to other sources. That's more advanced level reading. So that's where we always want to get to by the time we are for sure done with our high school journey. But, you know, I don't know if you could do well in college without being able to get into some syntopical learning. Our children are just barely beginning their reading journey if they're coming up with summaries for the things that they're learning. Make it easy on them by starting orally with their summaries, then move to written summaries over time. But as soon as you start putting the writing in, now they have to think of something else with the hand, how to move it, and they can sometimes forget the story. So still telling it to you, you typing it out, and then them writing it based upon your typing could still be very helpful so that they can keep their storyline straight at first. They are beginning their journey, but it will get better from here if you're patient. So don't push too much of the summary on them. Trust that it will come, and then just keep doing those things, having those conversations that will nurture that in them. If you want to know more about the education of your child, there are so many videos here on this channel, but also I do have an education website that is for homeschool education, but you know, every parent technically is a homeschooler, whether your child goes to a school or not. You may learn a lot there with the free content that's provided in the free conferences. It's called heartofhomeschool.net. Go there now and see if that can help you. And don't forget that your relationships also matter in all of this learning. If they're going to feel comfortable learning with you and narrating with you, you're going to want to have a good bond and good communication. And that's where teaching self-government can definitely help.